The Andara sector had been quiet for exactly 200 years. Three massive empires claimed the space as their own, drawing invisible lines between stars and planets. The Velcris Dominion controlled the eastern regions with their hive mind ships that looked like giant insects made of metal and bone. The Tharn Confederation ruled the western systems with reptilian warriors who believed honor came from conquest. The Morvax Collective claimed the northern zones, their crystalline bodies floating through space as pure energy wrapped in geometric shells. For 2 centuries, these three powers had maintained an uneasy peace. They divided the galaxy among themselves, like predators, sharing a hunting ground. Lesser species either served them or stayed hidden. No one challenged the empires. No one dared. On the border world of Cathara Prime, a small mining colony had operated for 15 years. The miners extracted rare metals from the planet's crust and shipped them to whoever paid the most. The colony seemed unremarkable, just another outpost struggling to survive in the contested zones between empire territories. The buildings were basic, prefabricated structures. The equipment was old, but functional. Nothing about the place suggested importance. Then one day, all communications from Cathara Prime stopped. The regular supply ships received no response. Automated distress beacons remained silent. Sensor scans showed the colony intact but lifeless, as if everyone had simply vanished. The Velcris Dominion noticed first. Their queen mind, a vast intelligence, spread across 1,000 drones, detected the silence, and grew suspicious. The colony sat on the edge of Velcris territory. If something had destroyed it, perhaps the Tharn were testing their borders. The Tharn Confederation noticed next. Their war chief, a massive reptilian commander covered in scars from 100 battles, saw an opportunity. If the Velcris had attacked a neutral colony, it meant they wanted war. He would be ready. The Morvax Collective noticed last but moved fastest. Their chorus of energy beings calculated probabilities and found the situation dangerous. They decided to investigate with overwhelming force. Within 3 days, all 3 empires sent their fleets to Cathara Prime. None of them knew the others were coming. None of them knew the truth about the mining colony. Far from the approaching fleets, deep in space where sensors could not reach, a ship hung invisible against the stars. The vessel was enormous, stretching 15 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull absorbed every scan, every probe, every attempt to detect it. The ship had a name painted on its side in a language the empires had never seen. Silent Dawn. On the bridge of the Silent Dawn, Commander Taewon sat in his chair and watched the tactical display. His gray-streaked hair and calm expression made him look more like a teacher than a warrior. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing as 3 separate fleets converged on Cathara Prime. The Velcris arrived first, reported Lieutenant Kehoe from the weapons station. The young officer's hands moved across his controls with practiced ease. 37 capital ships, including 3 queen carriers. They're spreading out in defensive formation. Tharn fleet just dropped out of hyperspace, added Chief Engineer Dahi from her console. She barely looked up from her calculations, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. 72 warships. Heavy assault configuration. They're not here to talk. Taewon nodded slowly. And the Morvax? As if answering his question, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. Crystalline spheres materialized from nowhere, their energy signatures blazing like small stars. 191 Morvax vessels formed a perfect geometric pattern around the planet. Sir, they're all powering weapons, Kehoe said, his voice tight with tension. Dr. Haewon stepped onto the bridge, carrying a datapad filled with analysis. She had spent decades studying these empires from the shadows, learning their languages, understanding their cultures, predicting their behaviors. Everything was happening exactly as she had calculated. The Velcris think the Tharn destroyed the colony, she explained to Taewon. The Tharn think the Velcris did it. The Morvax think both of them are responsible. None of them will back down. Their pride won't allow it. Taewon watched the fleets position themselves. Over 300 warships, each one powerful enough to destroy cities. now faced each other with weapons charged. The space around Kethera Prime crackled with energy shields and targeting sensors. A communication channel opened. The Velcris Queen Mind spoke first, her voice like 1,000 whispers overlapping. This territory belongs to the Dominion. Withdraw or be destroyed. The Tharn War Chief roared his response. Velcris cowards! You attack neutral colonies and blame others. Prepare to face true warriors. The Morvax chorus chimed in, their harmonized voices cold and mathematical. Your conflicts endanger galactic stability. Submit to collective authority or face elimination. The threats escalated. Ships moved closer. Weapons systems locked on targets. In moments, the largest space battle in decades would begin. Should we intervene, sir? Kehoe asked. Taewon shook his head slightly. Not yet. Let them see each other as the enemy first. On the Silent Dawn's main view screen, the 3 fleets began to fire. The Velcris launched swarms of biomissiles that writhed through space like living things. The Tharn answered with plasma cannons that turned the darkness into blazing streams of superheated matter. The Morvax released focused energy beams that could slice through armor like it was paper. The first ships began to die. Explosions blossomed across the void. Debris scattered in all directions. The empires were so focused on destroying each other that none of them noticed the small distortion in space, 100,000 kilometers away. Dr. Haewon watched the battle with sadness in her eyes. So much death. So much waste. And they don't even know why. And they will soon, Taewon said quietly. He turned to his crew. Prepare to decloak. Open all communication channels. It's time to introduce ourselves. Dahi's fingers flew across her controls. Cloaking systems disengaging. Power signatures going active. That's the point, Taewon replied. Throughout the 3 Empire fleets, sensor officers suddenly screamed warnings. Every ship's detection system went wild with alerts. Something massive was disrupting local space-time. Something that had been there all along. Invisible. Watching. The Silent Dawn materialized like a ghost becoming solid. Its angular hull caught the light from distant stars, making the ship look like a predator, uncloaking. It dwarfed even the largest Empire dreadnoughts, a monument to technology the galaxy had never seen. Silence fell across all 3 fleets. The fighting stopped. Hundreds of warships turned their sensors toward the newcomer, trying to understand what they were seeing. Taewon opened a communication channel that broadcast to every ship, every empire, every species watching the confrontation. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried absolute authority. This territory is under human protection. Withdraw immediately. On the Velcris flagship, the Queen Mind hesitated. Human? The word meant nothing to her vast intelligence. No species by that name existed in any galactic database. On the Tharn command ship, the war chief laughed. 1 ship against 3 fleets? These humans must be fools or suicidal. In the Morvax network, the collective chorus analyzed the newcomer. The energy readings were impossible. The hull composition was unknown. The weapon systems were beyond their understanding. The war chief decided to answer the human challenge with mockery. Unknown species, you are outmatched and outnumbered. Leave now, or share the fate of those who oppose the Confederation. Taewon closed his eyes briefly. Knowing what came next would change everything. He gave a single order. Kehoe, activate all weapon systems. The Silent Dawn came alive. Along its hull, ports opened to reveal weapons unlike anything the empires had ever built. Energy began to gather, but not the kind they understood. This was something deeper, more fundamental. The very fabric of space around the human ship began to distort. Every vessel within a light second felt it. Gravity itself was bending to the human's will. Navigational systems went haywire. Ships started drifting toward the Silent Dawn, despite full power to their engines. In that moment, The three empires realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had found something they didn't understand. Something more advanced than anything in their long histories. Something that had been watching them all along, hidden and patient. The age of empire dominance had ended. The humans had arrived. And every power in the galaxy would soon regret not knowing about them sooner. The Velcris Queen Mind had ruled for 3,000 years. She had conquered 100 worlds and destroyed countless enemies. She had never felt fear. But now, staring at the impossible readings from the human ship, something close to doubt crept into her vast consciousness. She made her decision quickly. The unknown was dangerous. The unknown must be eliminated. All ships, her mental voice commanded across the Hive network, destroy the intruder. The Tharn war chief heard the Velcris order and snarled. He would not let the insect minds claim this kill. Tharn warriors, show these fools what true power means. Attack! O power! The Morvax chorus calculated the probabilities and reached consensus. The human ship was an anomaly that threatened their understanding of the universe. It must be studied or eliminated. Engage target. Full weapons. Authorization. 300 warships turned away from each other and focused on the single human vessel. For a brief moment, ancient enemies became allies against a common threat. The first wave of attacks launched simultaneously. 2,000 missiles streaked through space from the Velcris ships, each one packed with bioengineered explosives that could burn through any known armor. The Tharn fired their plasma cannons, sending superheated bolts of matter moving at a fraction of light speed. The Morvax focused their energy beams, combining the power of dozens of ships into concentrated lances of pure destruction. On the Silent Dawn's bridge, alarms blared. The tactical display showed thousands of incoming weapons converging on their position. Any normal ship would have tried to evade, to run, to do anything to escape the overwhelming firepower. Commander Taewon simply watched. He didn't even bother to brace himself. Impact in 3 seconds, Kehoe reported, his voice steady despite the situation. Shields holding at standby power, added Dahi, not looking up from her console. The attacks hit. The space around the Silent Dawn lit up like a small star being born. Explosions overlapped explosions. Energy readings went off every scale. The Empire sensors showed enough firepower to vaporize a moon. When the light faded, the Silent Dawn remained exactly where it had been. Not moving, not damaged, not even scratched. On the Velcris flagship, the Queen Mind felt something she had never experienced before. True, cold fear. Her sensors showed the impossible. The human ship had taken enough damage to destroy 50 dreadnoughts, and it looked like nothing had happened. The Tharn warchief roared in frustration. Again! Fire again! A second wave of attacks hammered the human ship. Then a third. Then a fourth. Each time, the Silent Dawn simply absorbed the punishment, without any visible effect. Its shields weren't even at full power. Dr. Hae-Won stepped forward on the bridge. She activated the external communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies, so every Empire ship could hear her explanation. She had waited 200 years to deliver this lecture. You're wondering how this is possible, she said calmly. Let me educate you about humanity. We developed alone, isolated from the galactic community. We never found your trade networks or your technology exchanges. We had no one to learn from, no one to trade with. We could only rely on ourselves. She brought up holographic displays showing human scientific achievements. While you shared and copied technologies from each other for millennia, we had to invent everything from scratch. We solved problems you never knew existed. We unified field theory 300 years ago. We achieved quantum entanglement communication 200 years ago. We cracked zero-point energy extraction 150 years ago. The displays showed the human shield system. Our defensive fields don't block your attacks. They redirect the energy into our power systems. Every shot you fire makes us stronger. Please, continue. We could use the extra power. The Empire fleet stopped firing. Across 300 ships, commanders looked at their sensor readings and felt their confidence crack. If their weapons were useless, then what could they do? The Tharn warchief refused to accept defeat. Warriors do not surrender. We will ram them if we must. Prepare for close assault. Taewon heard the transmission and sighed. He had hoped to avoid bloodshed, but the Empires insisted on learning the hard way. He turned to his weapons officer. Kiho, warning shot only. Make it count. Yes, sir, Kiho replied. His hands moved across his controls with practiced precision. Gravity lance charged and ready, targeting empty space between the three fleets. Fire. The Silent Dawn released a weapon the galaxy had never seen. It wasn't a missile or a beam. It was gravity itself, compressed and directed, moving faster than light through a tunnel in space-time. The lance passed between the Empire fleets, not hitting any ships directly, but the gravitational shear in its wake was devastating. Space itself twisted along the weapon's path. Any ship too close to the beam felt tidal forces beyond comprehension. 30 vessels, including some of the largest dreadnoughts in all three fleets, simply crushed inward. Metal folded like paper. Crews died before they could even scream. The ships compressed down to points of infinite density, becoming temporary singularities that collapsed and evaporated in seconds. 30 ships. Gone. Erased from existence. And the humans had been aiming at empty space. The silence that followed was absolute. 300 ships floated in space, their crews too shocked to even think. They had just witnessed power beyond their understanding. One shot had done what entire fleets couldn't do. And it had been a warning. Taewon's voice came over the communication channels again, still calm, still patient. Humanity has observed your empires for 200 years. We know your strengths. We know your weaknesses. We know your secrets. We remained hidden because we hoped you would evolve beyond conquest. You have not. He paused, letting his words sink in. Withdraw now, and we will consider this a misunderstanding. Attack again, and we will respond with the full might of Earth's fleet. You've seen one ship and one warning shot. Imagine what we can do when we're actually trying. On the Velcris flagship, the Queen Mind pulled her consciousness back into herself, breaking contact with many of her drones. She needed to think. She needed to understand. These humans had watched them for 2 centuries? Impossible. The Velcris had the best sensors in the galaxy. How could an entire species remain hidden that long? The Tharn war chief felt his warrior pride warring with his survival instincts. Every fiber of his being demanded he attack, that he fight, that he prove Tharn's superiority. But the logical part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive through countless battles, whispered that this was different. This was an enemy that could erase his entire fleet before the battle even began. The Morvax chorus ran calculations and didn't like the results. The probability of victory against these humans was so close to 0 that it might as well not exist. But the probability of survival if they withdrew was much higher. The choice was mathematically obvious. Still, none of them wanted to be the first to retreat. To show weakness in front of the others would mean disaster. The empires might be facing a new threat, but they still feared each other almost as much. It was the Velcris Queen Mind who moved first. She opened a private channel to the other empire leaders, a channel the humans hopefully couldn't detect. We must confer. This is beyond any of us individually. The Tharn war chief snarled but agreed. 1 hour. Neutral coordinates. We discuss this new threat. The Morvax chorus chimed agreement. Taewon watched his sensors as the Empire fleets began to pull back, creating distance between themselves and the Silent Dawn. They weren't retreating. Not yet. But they weren't attacking either. It was progress. Dr. Hae-won came to stand beside his chair. They're calling for reinforcements. I'm detecting quantum communications to their home systems. They're going to bring their full fleets here. I know, Taewon said quietly. I'm counting on it. Haewon looked at him with concern. Even we can't fight the entire military might of 3 empires. If they bring everything they have, then we show them everything we have, Taewon finished. This was always going to happen, Haewon. The empires were never going to accept us as equals based on one ship, no matter how powerful. They need to see the truth. All of it. He activated his own quantum communicator, opening a secure channel that reached across hundreds of light years in an instant. The face that appeared on his screen made Haewon straighten to attention. Admiral Su-jin looked at them from her command center, her expression serious. She was a woman who had dedicated her entire life to preparing humanity for this moment. Behind her, holographic displays showed the positions of fleets throughout a dozen sectors. Commander Taewon, Dr. Haewon, she said formally. Status report. They're calling in their main forces, Admiral, Taewon reported. All 3 empires. Best estimates suggest they'll have 5,000 capital ships here within 48 hours. Su-jin nodded as if she had expected this. And our forces? Ready and waiting. As planned. Good. Su-jin's expression softened slightly. You've done well. Both of you. 200 years of preparation comes down to the next few days. Make humanity proud. The transmission ended. Taewon turned back to his crew. All stations. Maintain alert status. Get some rest if you can. The real show starts soon. In the space around Cathara Prime, the Empire fleets maintained their positions. Weapons charged. Sensors active. They waited for reinforcements and planned their strategies. They thought they understood the situation now. 1 advanced human ship against the combined might of 3 galactic empires. The numbers would decide this battle. They had no idea how wrong they were. The Silent Dawn wasn't alone. It had never been alone. Humanity had been hiding in this sector for decades, watching and waiting for exactly this moment. And in 48 hours, the galaxy would learn the truth. The Empire reinforcements took 2 days to arrive. During that time, the Silent Dawn remained motionless in space, like a predator confident in its strength. The original 300 warships kept their distance, maintaining a careful watch on the mysterious human vessel. Ships began arriving through hyperspace jumps. First came dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The Velcris brought their breeding ships, massive organic vessels that could spawn millions of fighter drones. Each breeding ship was itself the size of a city, pulsing with biological energy as it created an endless supply of attack craft. The Tharn deployed their fortress stations, mobile battle platforms as large as moons. These were the pride of the Confederation, each one carrying enough firepower to devastate entire planets. Covered in armor plating meters thick and bristling with thousands of weapons, the fortress stations had never been defeated in battle. The Morvax materialized their resonance web, a network of interconnected energy spheres that could combine their power into devastating attacks. When linked together, the Morvax ships became a single weapon system of terrifying potential. Their energy matrices pulsed with barely contained power, ready to unleash destruction on a scale few species could match. By the end of the second day, over 5,000 capital ships surrounded the Andara sector. Support craft, fighters, and drones brought the total number of Empire vessels to over 8 million. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. The combined firepower could sterilize 100 worlds, and it all focused on one human ship. On the bridge of the Silent Dawn, the crew watched the tactical displays with expressions ranging from concern to grim determination. Even with their advanced technology, the numbers were overwhelming. Sir, Kehoe said quietly, they have us surrounded on all sides. Even if we destroy 1,000 ships, there would still be 4,000 more. And the fighters. He didn't need to finish. Millions of small attack craft could overwhelm even the best defenses through sheer numbers. Commander Taewon smiled slightly. Kehoe, how many Empire ships do you see on your sensors? 5,217 capital ships, sir, plus approximately 8 million support craft. And how many human ships do you see? Just us, sir. Exactly, Taewon said. That's what they see too. They think they understand the situation. Let's correct that misunderstanding. Taewon. The Empire commanders had agreed on a joint strategy. The Velcris Queen Mind would coordinate the attack through her hive network. The Tharn War Chief would lead the assault with his fortress stations. The Morvax Chorus would provide overwhelming firepower through their resonance web. Together, they would prove that no single ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against three empires united. The Queen Mind opened a final communication channel to the Silent Dawn. Her mental voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Human vessel, you have one final chance to surrender. You are outnumbered 5,000 to 1. Your technology is impressive, but numbers will prevail. Submit to Empire authority or be destroyed. Taewon stood from his chair and walked to the main view screen. He looked at the countless ships arrayed against them and felt a moment of sadness. So much pride. So much arrogance. He almost felt sorry for what was about to happen. You misunderstand, he said calmly into the communication channel. We were not threatening you with one ship. We were being polite. He nodded to Dahi. Engineer, execute protocol revelation. Dahi's fingers flew across her controls. Yes, sir. Sending the signal now. Throughout the Andara sector, hidden ships received the command. Systems that had been dormant for years, even decades, came online. Cloaking fields that had made them invisible to every sensor suddenly deactivated, and the galaxy saw the truth. 200 warships materialized around the Empire fleet. Each one was a peer to the Silent Dawn, massive vessels of incredible power that had been there all along. Watching, waiting. They appeared in perfect formation, their positions carefully calculated to create overlapping fields of fire that covered every approach. But that wasn't all. From the outer system, a structure the size of Earth's moon uncloaked. It was a human fleet base, a mobile construction and repair facility that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Its docks were full of ships under construction, showing that humanity's fleet was still growing. From the asteroid field, dozens of observation posts revealed themselves. Each one was armed with long-range weapons capable of striking targets across the entire sector. From near the system's star, where no ship should have been able to survive, 3 research vessels appeared. Their exotic shielding allowed them to operate in conditions that would vaporize any Empire craft, studying stellar phenomena while remaining completely hidden. From positions scattered across 100 million kilometers of space, supply ships, hospital ships, science vessels, and support craft all decloaked. The logistics network required to maintain a fleet this size far from home was staggering. In total, humanity revealed 2,000 warships and support vessels. Every single one had been in the Andara sector for years. Some for decades. They had watched the empires, learned from them, and prepared for this exact moment. The silence from the Empire fleets was deafening. Sensor officers across 5,000 ships scrambled to verify what they were seeing. The numbers couldn't be wrong. 2,000 human vessels had simply appeared. Ships that had been completely invisible to their most advanced detection systems. The Velcris Queen Mind felt her confidence shatter. If humans had been this close without her knowing, where else were they? How many other sectors had they infiltrated? Had they been watching the Velcris homeworld itself? The thought made her vast consciousness recoil in horror. The Tharn War Chief's roar of outrage echoed across communication channels. His pride had been wounded beyond measure. The Tharn prided themselves on their warrior instincts, their ability to sense threats, yet an entire fleet had surrounded them without detection. It was a humiliation, worse than any battlefield defeat. The Morvax Chorus ran new calculations and found their entire strategic assessment had been wrong. The probability of human victory had just increased dramatically. More concerning, If humans could hide this effectively, what else might they be capable of? The Morvacs hated unknowns, and humanity represented the biggest unknown in galactic history. Dr. Hay-1 activated the communication system again, her voice broadcasting to every ship in both fleets. For 200 years, humanity has maintained a presence in multiple sectors across the galaxy. We've observed your empires, studied your technologies, learned your languages and cultures. We've been to your homeworlds. We've seen your military installations. We've mapped your supply routes and identified your strategic weaknesses. She brought up holographic displays showing detailed intelligence on all three empires. Internal political struggles in the Velcris Hive. Secret weapons development in Tharn. Space. Hidden vulnerabilities in Morvac's energy matrices. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. We know everything about you, Hay-1 continued. And until now, you knew nothing about us. That was intentional. We wanted to understand if the galaxy could be reasoned with. If empires could be reformed peacefully. We've concluded that you cannot. You only understand force. So, we will show you force. Admiral Sujin's image appeared on every view screen in both fleets simultaneously. The quantum communication technology required to do this shouldn't have existed. But humanity had made it work. Sujin looked at the Empire commanders with an expression that mixed disappointment and determination. Leaders of the Velcris Dominion, Tharn Confederation, and Morvax Collective, she began formally. I am Admiral Sujin, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Fleet. I speak for all humanity when I deliver the following demands. She held up her hand, counting on her fingers. 1. Immediate withdrawal from the Andara sector and 20 neighboring systems. 2. Liberation of all vassal species currently under Empire control. 3. Establishment of neutral zones where developing species can grow without interference. 4. Submission to human arbitration for all territorial disputes. 5. Reparations paid to species harmed by Empire expansion policies. The Empire commanders erupted in outrage. The Velcris Queen Mind's mental voice screeched across networks. The Tharn war chief bellowed his refusal. The Morvax chorus chimed in discord. The demands were impossible, insulting, unacceptable. 3 empires had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed countless rebellions and destroyed any species that challenged their authority. They would not bow to upstart humans, no matter how advanced their technology seemed. Sujin waited for the shouting to die down. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. We anticipated your refusal. Very well. You've chosen the hard way. She turned slightly, speaking to someone off-screen. Commander Tay-1, you may proceed with Operation Sundering. Throughout the human fleet, weapon systems activated. But the ships didn't target the Empire vessels surrounding them. Instead, their targeting computers locked onto coordinates hundreds of light-years away. The Empire commanders noticed this with confusion that quickly turned to horror. They recognized some of those coordinates. Their homeworlds, their major colonies, their shipyard complexes, and industrial centers. What you're seeing, Sujin explained, is our quantum entanglement targeting system. Distance is irrelevant. Time lag doesn't exist. Our weapons can strike any point in the galaxy instantaneously. While you brought your fleets here, you left your homes defenseless. The tactical displays showed human weapon systems charging. The Empire commanders frantically opened communications with their homeworlds, demanding status reports. The responses confirmed their worst fears. Human ships had appeared in orbit of every major Empire world. Not attacking. Not yet. Just hovering in position with weapons ready. You have 1 hour to accept our terms, Sujin stated. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why Earth survived long enough to reach the stars. Our world was a nightmare of conflict for thousands of years. We fought wars that would have destroyed lesser species. We built weapons capable of sterilizing our own planet. We learned to kill efficiently and creatively. She leaned forward, her expression hard. We evolved as predators. We refined our tactics through endless conflicts with each other. By the time we unified and reached for space, we had already become the most dangerous species we'd ever encountered. And then, we spent 200 years preparing to face you. The hour countdown appeared on every screen. Empire commanders looked at their fleets, then at the human forces, then at the reports coming in from their homeworlds. They were trapped. If they attacked here, their homes would burn. If they withdrew, they would appear weak. If they surrendered, they would lose everything they had built over millennia. The Tharn war chief made his decision first. We will not surrender. Tharn warriors know no fear. Attack! His fortress stations began to move forward, their weapons charging for a final, desperate assault. And that's when everything went wrong. The Tharn war chief's order to attack triggered chaos across the Empire fleets. The Velcris Queen Mind shrieked her objections, realizing the foolishness of fighting while their homeworlds were threatened. The Morvax chorus fractured into disagreement, some nodes wanting to surrender, while others calculated that immediate attack might prevent human retaliation. But Tharn warriors obeyed their war chief without question. 70 fortress stations began their assault run, accelerating toward the human fleet with weapons blazing. Behind them, hundreds of Tharn cruisers and destroyers followed, their plasma cannons firing continuously. Commander Taewon watched the Tharn advance with sadness. They're throwing away their lives for pride. What a waste. Should we try to warn them again? Asked Haewon. They wouldn't listen. Kiho. Defensive measures only. Try not to kill more than necessary. Kiho nodded, his hands steady on his controls. Yes, sir. Activating gravity well generators. The human fleet didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. Gravity wells appeared throughout the Tharn formation, invisible hands of force that pulled ships off course. Fortress stations that had been moving in perfect military precision suddenly found themselves drifting into each other. Increase field strength by 20%, Taewon ordered. Let's end this quickly. The gravity wells intensified. Tharn ships began to crumple under the pressure. Their thick armor, designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, proved useless against forces that could crush matter at the atomic level. 50 fortress stations compressed like paper being crumpled by an invisible fist. Their crews died instantly, not even having time to scream. The remaining Tharn vessels tried to retreat, but the gravity wells had them trapped. They fired everything they had at the human ships. Desperation, overcoming tactics. Their plasma cannons, their missile batteries, their experimental weapons. All unleashed in one final barrage. The Silent Dawn's shields didn't even register the attack. The energy from thousands of weapons simply fed into human power systems, making their ships stronger. That's enough, Taewon said quietly. Release them. The gravity wells disappeared. The surviving Tharn ships, barely 20% of their original assault force, limped back to their main fleet. The war chief's voice came over the communication channel, no longer roaring with confidence, but filled with bitter understanding. You could have destroyed us all. Why didn't you? Taewon answered honestly. Because we're not here to commit genocide. We're here to stop empires from oppressing the galaxy. There's a difference. While the Tharn attack had been underway, something else had been happening throughout Empire territory. The vassal species that the empires had conquered and enslaved were receiving broadcasts. Dr. Haewon had spent decades preparing these messages in hundreds of languages. On mining worlds controlled by the Velcris, workers heard human voices telling them that liberation was coming. On agricultural planets serving the Tharn, farmers learned that they didn't have to accept oppression anymore. On energy collection stations run by the Morvax, enslaved beings discovered they had allies. The uprisings began almost simultaneously. Species that had been conquered generations ago suddenly remembered what freedom meant. They sabotaged Empire equipment. They refused to work. They attacked their overseers. Across 50 systems, revolution spread like wildfire. The Empire commanders realized with horror that humanity hadn't just prepared military operations. They had prepared a complete strategy to dismantle Empire control from within. While the fleets faced each other at Andara, the empires were already crumbling from internal pressure. "Withdraw your forces from contested systems immediately," Admiral Sujin's voice came over the communication channels again. "Or we will support the rebellions with military force. Your choice." A.T. Larging. The Velcris Queen Mind made a decision. She opened a private, heavily encrypted channel directly to Sujin. The human admiral accepted the communication, her face appearing on screens in the Velcris flagship. "Admiral Sujin," the Queen Mind said, her mental voice much quieter than before. "But I cannot do so while the Tharn Warchief continues his reckless actions. He will drag us all to destruction." Sujin considered this. "What do you propose?" "Low. Low. Low. The Velcris will withdraw from this sector. We will release our vassal species. We will accept human arbitration, but we need assurance that the Tharn will not use our withdrawal as an opportunity to attack our territory." "And the Morvax?" As if hearing their name, the Morvax chorus chimed in on the channel. "Collective wishes to join negotiations. Current situation is unsustainable. Probability of Empire victory approaches 0. The Tharn Warchief, monitoring all communications, heard this and exploded in rage. "Cowards! Weaklings! The Confederation will never surrender." He cut his connection and issued orders to his remaining fleet. "All ships, attack the Velcris! They have betrayed the Alliance." The Tharn turned their weapons on their former allies. In his fury and wounded pride, the Warchief had decided that if he couldn't defeat the humans, he would at least punish the Velcris for their weakness. It was exactly the wrong decision. The Tharn attacked with everything they had left, but the Velcris, seeing the assault coming, immediately broadcast a distress call to the human fleet. "Admiral Sujin, the Tharn are attacking us. We request assistance under the terms we just discussed." Taewon looked at Sujin's face on his screen. She nodded once. "Protect the Velcris ships. Disable the Tharn fleet. Full authorization." What happened next would be recorded in galactic history as the Battle of Broken Pride. The human fleet didn't just respond to the Tharn attack. They demonstrated the full range of their capabilities. Captain Young-ho's carrier, the Eternal Vigilance, launched its fighter wings. Human pilots in neural-linked craft moved with impossible precision, dodging through Tharn fire like dancers. Each fighter carried weapons that could cripple capital ships, and the pilots used them with devastating efficiency. On the surface of nearby Cathara Prime, Colonel Nari led her marine forces in a demonstration that shocked the galaxy. She had taken volunteers from the human fleet to show what human ground forces could do. Her marines wore powered armor that made them stronger than any biological soldier. They moved through simulated combat scenarios that the empires had considered impossible. The broadcast of these exercises went out to all fleets. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just have superior ships. They had superior soldiers, superior tactics, and superior training. If it came to ground warfare, the empires would lose even more decisively than they had in space. The Tharn fleet lasted 18 minutes. That was all. In 18 minutes, human weapons disabled over 4,000 warships. Not destroyed, disabled. Ships were left drifting with their weapons offline and their engines dead, but their life support intact. Crews survived, trapped in hulls that had become prisons rather than warships. The Warchief's flagship was the last to fall. Taewon personally oversaw its capture. Human Marines, led by a team from Nari's forces, boarded the fortress station. They moved through the corridors methodically, stunning Tharn warriors with weapons that disrupted neural systems without killing. When they reached the command center, the war chief stood alone, his honor guard unconscious around him. He held a ceremonial blade, ready to fight to the death. But the human Marines simply pointed their weapons at him and waited. "Surrender," said the team leader, speaking in perfect Tharn dialect. "Your warriors need you alive to rebuild. Dead chiefs serve no one." The war chief looked at the humans in their armor, then at his fallen guards, then at his blade. Slowly, he dropped the weapon. For the first time in his long life, he surrendered. Across the sector, the remaining Empire ships stopped fighting. The Velkris had already withdrawn to designated positions. The Morvax had never engaged after the initial confrontation. The Tharn had been completely defeated. The battle was over. Admiral Sujin broadcast to every ship, every planet, every station in the region. The age of conquest is over. The empires that ruled through fear and force have fallen. But humanity did not come here to replace one tyranny with another. We came to create something better. No, she gestured, and the holographic displays showed the damage from the battle. Thousands of ships disabled, but not destroyed. Crews alive, but captured. Even the Tharn warriors who had fought so desperately were being given medical treatment. We showed you our strength because you would accept nothing less. But our true power isn't in weapons or technology. It's in our understanding that peace is built through cooperation, not domination. We're offering you a choice. Join us in creating a new galactic order where all species have rights, or remain isolated in your empire territories, while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. The Velkris Queen Mind was the first to respond. The Dominion accepts. We will work with humanity to establish this new order. Thanks for watching. The Morvax chorus followed. Collective agrees. Cooperation offers higher probability of long-term survival than continued conflict. Everyone waited for the Tharn response. The war chief, now aboard the Silent Dawn in comfortable but secure quarters, spoke through his guards. His voice had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something else. Respect. The Confederation fought with honor and lost with honor. We accept these terms. But we ask, will you teach us your ways of war? We see now that strength alone is not enough. Tharn warriors wish to learn from those who defeated us. Tae-Won, standing outside the warchief's quarters, smiled. That can be arranged. Warriors should always seek to improve. We'll share our knowledge if you share yours. All species have something to teach. Dr. Hae-Won joined him, looking at the tactical displays that showed Empire ships moving into new positions under human coordination. It actually worked. We changed everything. We changed this part of the galaxy, Tae-Won corrected. The rest is going to take time. Years, maybe decades. Empires don't transform overnight. But we have time now, Hae-Won said. That's what matters. We bought the galaxy a chance to evolve. In the space around Kethra Prime, 2,000 human ships and 5,000 Empire vessels maintained careful positions. They were no longer enemies. Not yet friends. But something in between. The first step toward something new. And watching from 1,000 hidden positions throughout the galaxy, more human ships observed and waited. If this sector could be changed, perhaps others could follow. 3 months after the battle, the Andara Council held its first official session. The space station that hosted the meeting was newly constructed, built by combined efforts from multiple species. Its design reflected input from dozens of cultures, a symbol of cooperation, replacing conquest. Admiral Sujin stood at the center of the main chamber, watching representatives from over 300 species take their seats. Many of these species had been vassal states just weeks ago. Now, they sat as equals, their voices carrying the same weight as any Empire representative. The Velkris Queen Mind attended through a smaller avatar body, one she had grown specifically for diplomatic purposes. It was unsettling for many to see a Velkris that wasn't connected to the hive, but the Queen Mind had explained it was necessary. She wanted to learn to think as an individual, not just as part of a collective consciousness. The Tharn war chief, no longer holding that title but still respected by his people, wore formal diplomatic robes instead of battle armor. He had renamed himself Chief Peacemaker, taking a title that would have been considered shameful in old Tharn culture. Now it represented honor of a different kind. The Morvax sent representatives from their chorus, energy beings contained in special crystalline vessels that allowed them to interact with solid matter without dissipating. They hummed quietly with calculations, always analyzing, always planning. Dr. Hei-Wan called the council to order. She had been appointed as humanity's first ambassador to galactic species, a role she had trained for unknowingly through decades of research. Her voice carried through translation systems into hundreds of languages. "We gather today to establish the Charter of Free Stars," she began. "This document will define how species interact, how disputes are resolved, and how we protect those who cannot protect themselves. It will replace the old system of empire domination with something better, something fair." The discussions lasted for days. Every species wanted their concerns heard. There were arguments about territorial boundaries, resource sharing, and military limitations. Old grievances surfaced between species that had fought centuries ago. New tensions appeared as former vassals confronted their previous masters. But through it all, the human representatives maintained order. They didn't dictate solutions. They facilitated discussions. They helped find compromises. They reminded everyone why they were there: to build something that would last. The Velcris Queen Mind surprised many by being one of the strongest voices for reform. She spoke openly about the mistakes her species had made, the suffering they had caused, the arrogance that had led to their downfall. It was difficult for her to admit these things, but she understood it was necessary. "We Velcris built our power on exploitation," she said during one session. "We treated other species as resources to be harvested. We justified this by telling ourselves we were superior, more evolved, more deserving. We were wrong." She gestured with her small avatar body. "Humanity showed us that superiority isn't measured in conquest. It's measured in wisdom, in restraint, in the choice to build rather than destroy. The Velcris want to learn this. We want to use our biological engineering to help species instead of control them. We want to terraform dead worlds into gardens. We want to cure diseases. We want to create, not consume." Her words moved many in the council. Species that had suffered under Velcris rule found themselves listening, considering, and eventually accepting that change was possible. Chief Peacemaker spoke about Tharn culture and how it needed to evolve. "We Tharn believed that honor came from defeating enemies. The more we conquered, the more honorable we became. Humanity taught us that true honor comes from protecting those weaker than yourself, from standing against injustice, from having strength and choosing not to abuse it." He stood tall, his scales catching the light. "I fought humans and lost. But in losing, I learned more than I had in 1,000 victories. Tharn warriors are now training with human marines. We're learning their tactics, their strategies, their codes of conduct, and in return, we teach them our warrior traditions, our sense of duty, our commitment to protect." A new philosophy was emerging from these exchanges. Tharn warriors were becoming peacekeepers instead of conquerors. They volunteered to defend vulnerable species from pirates and raiders. They used their fortresses not as weapons platforms, but as shield stations protecting trade routes and colonies. The Morvax chorus presented their contribution to the new order. As energy beings, they experienced reality differently than biological species. They offered to create a galaxy-wide communication network using their unique abilities to manipulate electromagnetic frequencies. Instant communication across any distance, available to all species equally. Information sharing benefits all. The Morvax chorus chimed. "Collective has calculated that cooperation produces better outcomes than competition in 97.3% of scenarios. We wish to facilitate cooperation through improved communication infrastructure." Their offer was accepted enthusiastically. Within weeks, Morvax communication nodes began appearing in systems throughout the sector. Species that had never been able to contact each other suddenly found themselves in conversation. Cultural exchanges flourished. Scientific collaboration accelerated. The galaxy was becoming more connected than ever before. Captain Young Ho took command of something called the Frontier Protection Force. His carriers patrolled the borders of free space, watching for any Empire loyalists who refused to accept the new order. There were a few attempts at resistance, small groups who wanted to return to the old ways. Young Ho and his forces stopped them each time, but always with minimal casualties. "We're not here to punish those who disagree," Young Ho explained to his crews. "We're here to protect those who can't protect themselves. If we become the tyrants we overthrew, we've accomplished nothing." Colonel Nari did something even more ambitious. She created the Galactic Marine Corps, recruiting from multiple species. Humans trained alongside Tharn, Velcris, and dozens of other races. At first, the different species struggled to work together. Their biologies were different, their tactics varied, and their cultures clashed. But Nari was patient. She designed training programs that emphasized each species' strengths while teaching them to compensate for each other's weaknesses. Tharn warriors learned to think strategically like humans. Humans learned Tharn close combat techniques. Velcris drones learned to operate independently. Energy beings learned to coordinate with solid matter troops. After 6 months, the first mixed species marine unit completed training. They were 15 soldiers from 7 different species who had learned to function as one team. Their graduation ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, showing what cooperation could achieve. Chief Engineer Dahi led the technology exchange program, carefully sharing human innovations while respecting the need to prevent dangerous weapons from spreading. She worked with scientists from every species, teaching them the principles behind human technology without simply handing them finished products. "If we just give you the technology, you'll depend on us," she explained to a group of eager researchers. "But if we teach you the science behind it, you can innovate on your own. You might even create things we never imagined." The exchange went both ways. Human scientists learned Velcris biological engineering techniques. They studied Tharn metallurgy and materials science. They explored Morvax energy manipulation. Each species had developed unique solutions to common problems, and sharing this knowledge benefited everyone. Lieutenant Kehoe, promoted to commander, became an instructor at the new Galactic Defense Academy. He taught both humans and aliens about modern warfare, but his most important lessons weren't about weapons or tactics, they were about ethics. "Anyone can destroy," he told his students. "Destruction is easy. But knowing when to fight, when to negotiate, and when to walk away requires wisdom. A true warrior's greatest victory is the battle they prevent from happening." His students came from backgrounds where might made right. Slowly, he taught them different values. That strength existed to protect. That honor came from service. That the best warriors were those who fought only when necessary and showed mercy when possible. Admiral Sujin moved beyond military command to become humanity's voice in galactic politics. She established the Terran Confederation, the formal government representing human interests. But she made sure it wasn't a dictatorship. Every major decision went through councils and committees where multiple species had representation. "Humanity made mistakes on Earth," she said during the inaugural address. "We had wars, oppression, and countless failures. We learned from those mistakes. Now we're helping the galaxy learn the same lessons without having to suffer the same costs." One day, the Velcris Queen Mind requested a private meeting with Sujin. They met in a simple room, with no guards, no recording devices. Just 2 leaders talking honestly. "I have a question," the Queen Mind said. "Why didn't you destroy us? Your ships surrounded our homeworld. Your weapons could have eliminated the Velcris completely. Why show mercy?" "Let's the 40. Sujin was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because destruction is easy. Building something better is hard. We didn't come to the stars to become the next empire. We came to find our place in the community of intelligent life. But you had to know we might betray you. That we might rebuild our forces and attack again. Yes, Sujin admitted. That's always a risk. But we chose to believe you could change. And we made sure that if you did betray us, we'd be ready. Trust, but verify. As we say on Earth, the Queen Mind was quiet, processing this. Finally, she said, I want to propose an alliance. Not from obligation or fear, but from genuine respect. The Velcris have biological engineering capabilities you lack. In exchange, we wish to learn your medical techniques. Together, we could cure diseases across hundreds of species. Sujin smiled. I accept. Let's start with something simple, and build from there. That alliance became the model for others. The Tharn and humans created joint military training programs. The Morvax and humans collaborated on energy research. Dozens of species formed partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than domination. 10 years passed. The Andara sector transformed from a battleground into a center of cooperation. The station that had hosted the first council session expanded into a small city in space, home to representatives from 500 species. Trade flourished. Science advanced. Art and culture spread between worlds, but there were still challenges. Some regions of the galaxy remained under Empire control, ruled by powers that hadn't been touched by the reforms. Raiders and pirates operated in lawless zones. New conflicts emerged as species competed for resources. The Council addressed each problem as it arose. Sometimes they sent diplomats. Sometimes they sent peacekeepers. Sometimes they simply offered help to species trying to solve their own problems. The goal wasn't to control the galaxy, but to guide it toward something better. Commander Taewon, now an admiral himself, stood on the bridge of the Silent Dawn and looked at the star charts. So much had changed, but so much remained the same. There were still threats out there, still empires that needed to be confronted, still species that needed protection. Dr. Hae-won joined him, older now but still energetic. Do you ever regret it? Revealing ourselves? We had a comfortable life in the shadows. Taewon shook his head. We did what needed to be done. The galaxy was heading toward total empire domination. We stopped that. Whatever comes next, at least there's hope now. A message came through from Admiral Sujin. Commander Taewon, we're detecting signals from the Perseus Arm. Unknown species. Possibly another empire. They're expanding rapidly and enslaving everyone in their path. We need the first contact fleet. Ready to move. We have the first contact. We have the first contact. Taewon smiled slightly. And so it continues. How long until we're ready to depart? 12 hours, sir. The fleet is assembling now. Hae-won looked at the star charts showing the new threat. Another empire to confront. Do you think they'll be reasonable? Probably not, Taewon admitted, but we'll give them the chance. And if they refuse, we'll show them what happened to the last empires that threatened free species. Throughout the galaxy, humanity's ships maintained their silent watch. Some were visible now, serving as guardians and peacekeepers. Others remained hidden, observing and reporting, ready to respond when needed. The network humanity had built over 200 years of secret observation continued to grow. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity wasn't the biggest species. They weren't the oldest. They weren't the most numerous, but they were perhaps the most determined, the most innovative, and the most committed to the idea that all intelligent life deserved freedom and dignity. The age of conquest had ended. The age of cooperation had begun. And wherever species faced oppression, wherever empires threatened the weak, wherever injustice flourished, humanity would be there, not as conquerors, not as overlords, but as partners, allies, and when necessary, as the sharp edge of justice that tyrants had learned to fear. The silent dawn turned toward the Perseus arm, its engines coming to life. Behind it, 200 ships of the First Contact Fleet fell into formation. They moved silently through space, invisible to sensors, heading toward whatever challenges awaited them. In the council chambers, the Velcris Queen Mind signed a new treaty with Admiral Sujin. In the training grounds, Tharn warriors practiced alongside human marines. In laboratories across 100 worlds, scientists from countless species worked together on problems that would benefit everyone. The galaxy wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was better than it had been. And that was enough. Humanity had emerged from the shadows and changed everything. The empires that once ruled through fear now served through cooperation. The species that had been enslaved now stood free, and the future, once dark with the certainty of endless conquest, now shone with possibility. The stars belonged to everyone, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way.